1964. Pontiac births the GTO and invents the muscle car as we know it. Chrysler unleashes the 426 race Hemi and rewrites NASCAR overnight. Ford launches the Mustang and creates an entirely new category of automobile. Oldsmobile drops the 442. Plymouth introduces the Barracuda. It is, by any measure, the single most important year in American automotive history. And in the middle of all that noise, Ford quietly built something that most people, even serious muscle car people, have never heard of. A full-size, four-door adjacent luxury car, bucket seats, console, chrome sparkle. The kind of car a successful salesman would drive his family to church in, with 425 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque from a 427 cubic inch V8 that Ford's own engineers built less for civility and more for domination. On paper, it was a street car. In practice, it was a racing engine with license plates. It's called the Galaxie 500 R code. Ford built 3,140 of them in 1964. Today, only 76 are confirmed to exist, and almost nobody outside the most dedicated Ford enthusiast circles has ever heard its name.
Ford's declaration of war, the total performance era. To understand why the Galaxie R code existed, you have to understand the specific corporate decision that made it possible. And it starts with a formal industry agreement that Ford decided to abandon. Back in 1957, the Automobile Manufacturers Association, the trade group representing every major American car company, had adopted a resolution discouraging factory-backed racing. For 5 years, Ford had largely honored that agreement, at least publicly. Officially, motorsports were something Detroit's manufacturers kept at arm's length. In June 1962, Henry Ford II changed that entirely. He officially withdrew Ford Motor Company from the AMA agreement, freeing the company to publicly fund and promote racing programs without the pretense of corporate restraint. This wasn't a minor policy adjustment. It was a declaration that Ford intended to become the performance brand in America. Full stop. The company poured millions into development almost immediately. Drag strips, NASCAR ovals, even Le Mans, where Ford's endurance racing ambitions would eventually produce the GT40 program. This became known internally and publicly as the Total Performance Era, and it turned names like Carroll Shelby, Holman Moody, and Alan Mann into household words among enthusiasts. Dealerships like Tasca Ford in Rhode Island and Galpin Ford in California became synonymous with the word performance. Places where a genuinely dedicated buyer could walk in and order something close to a race car with a warranty. By 1963, Ford was well on its way to becoming the high-performance motor king, both on the track and in the showroom. The engine at the center of that ambition was the FE Series 427 cubic inch big block V8, technically 425.98 cubic inches, rounded up to 427, specifically to match the displacement limits that major racing series used as their ceiling. Ford's engineers knew exactly which door they were trying to walk through when they designed it. The 427 made its street debut mid-1963, and it made its name first in one specific car: the Galaxie 500.
The Galaxie, from family favorite to NASCAR weapon. The Ford Galaxie itself wasn't a niche product. It was Ford's bread-and-butter full-size car, and by 1964, it was selling in genuinely enormous numbers. 593,533 full-size Fords left the assembly line that year, making 1964 the Galaxie's best-ever season. This was mainstream, mass-market American transportation. Within that massive production run, though, existed a very specific hierarchy. At the top sat the Galaxie 500 XL, the luxury-oriented trim, distinguished by bucket seats, a center console, and enough chrome to make a respectable statement in any driveway in America. The XL was aimed squarely at the successful professional who wanted his full-size Ford to feel special, not just spacious. And then there were the fastbacks, the sports hardtop bodies that Ford introduced specifically to chase NASCAR aerodynamics, replacing the more upright box-top roofline with a sleeker, more slippery profile, more power, less drag. The perfect marriage between performance ambition and the specific physics of high-speed oval racing. Buried within that lineup, available to anyone willing to check the right box on the order form and pay for it, was the R-Code option, the dual four-barrel version of the 427, sitting at the absolute top of Ford's engine hierarchy that year. The specifications were genuinely uncompromising for what was ostensibly a passenger car engine. A massive 4.23-inch bore, paired with a comparatively short 3.78-inch stroke, a combination engineered specifically to allow the engine to rev freely and safely towards 7,000 revolutions per minute without self-destructing. A top-oiler lubrication system, which fed oil to the crankshaft and main bearings first, before anything else in the engine. A deliberate design choice to protect the bottom end during the kind of sustained high RPM abuse that a passenger car engine was never supposed to experience. Twin Holley four-barrel carburetors sitting on an aluminum intake manifold, a forged steel crankshaft, cross-bolted main bearing caps for additional structural rigidity under load, solid lifters, mechanical, and unforgiving, requiring genuine mechanical sympathy to maintain properly. This was not an engine that had been softened for comfort and then marketed as sporty. This was, in the words of one contemporary review, a street engine on paper and a racing engine with license plates in practice. And when you put that racing engine into the luxury-trimmed Galaxie 500 XL specifically, bucket seats, console, chrome sparkle and all, you got a car with a split personality that automotive writers in 1964 genuinely struggled to categorize. The numbers: 425 horsepower wearing a tuxedo. Officially, Ford rated the R-Code 427 at 425 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque at 3,700 revolutions per minute. That official number, like almost every horsepower rating from this era, was conservative by design. Insurance companies and racing sanctioning bodies were both paying close attention to published figures, and manufacturers had every incentive to understate. Car Life magazine, testing a more extreme version of the same basic engine family that year, estimated real output closer to 520 horsepower at 6,500 revolutions per minute. The compression ratio sat at a genuinely aggressive 10.9 to 1. Later road test versions of the engine pushed forged pistons to 11.5 to 1. Numbers that demanded premium fuel and rewarded careful tuning. Mechanical lifters meant the valve train required actual attention and periodic adjustment. This was not a set-it-and-forget-it passenger car engine. Dual-point ignition and free-flow long-branch exhaust manifolds completed a specification sheet that read like a parts list for a genuine competition machine. The performance numbers back up every bit of that specification. A stock-bodied 427-powered Ford could sprint from 0 to 60 in just over 6 seconds and complete the quarter mile in just under 15 seconds. Genuinely impressive figures for a car spanning 210 inches in length and weighing close to 4,000 pounds. Ford's own test driver, running a prototype 500 XL R-Code at Riverside Raceway in the summer of 1963, recorded most 0 to 60 runs in the high 7s, on a car equipped with a small 3.50 rear axle ratio and skinny 6.70 by 15-inch tires that were doing their absolute best to contain all that torque. Put those numbers next to the Fairlane Thunderbolt, the purpose-built, stripped-out NHRA Superstock drag racer that shared the exact same 427 R-code engine family. The Thunderbolt was running mid-11-second quarter miles straight off the showroom floor. The Galaxie R-code, carrying full luxury trim, full sound deadening, full carpet, a working heater, and a genuine back seat, was running low to mid 14 seconds. That difference in performance wasn't a failure of the Galaxie's engineering. It was the direct, honest cost of luxury. Same engine, same fundamental hardware, but the Galaxie was hauling considerably more weight, comfort equipment, and civility. This was Ford's dual identity on full display in a single model year. Brutality for the quarter mile, wrapped in luxury for the boulevard, available from the exact same engine family, depending on which body you bolted it into. The NASCAR connection. Why this car won 30 races in 1964. Here's where the Galaxie R-code story becomes something more than an obscure engine option. Because this specific car, in this specific configuration, fundamentally changed how NASCAR racing was approached. In 1964, the Galaxie R-code secured 30 Grand National race victories, more than double its nearest rival that season. That result earned Ford the Manufacturer's Award of Excellence, one of the most prestigious recognitions in the sport, awarded for sustained competitive dominance across an entire racing calendar, not a single lucky result. The car's success came despite genuine adversity. Ford had developed an even more extreme version of the 427, the legendary SOHC Cammer engine, capable of producing well in excess of 650 horsepower with dual four-barrel carburation. NASCAR President Bill France effectively banned the engine from competition, citing homologation requirements that Ford couldn't reasonably meet on the timeline available. Ford was also getting outgunned in raw engine technology by Chrysler's 426 Hemi, which was rewriting NASCAR's competitive landscape in real time. And yet the Galaxie R-code still won 30 races. Part of that success came from raw durability. With unmatched reliability, the Galaxie proved itself a dominant workhorse, particularly on high-banked, long-distance oval tracks, where an engine that could survive sustained high RPM abuse without failure was worth more than an engine that could produce a slightly higher peak number, but couldn't finish 500 miles. The other part of that success came from aerodynamics, and this is where the Galaxie R-code's influence extends well beyond its own model year. Ford's introduction of the sports hardtop fastback roofline mid-cycle, specifically engineered to reduce drag and improve high-speed stability on NASCAR's fastest superspeedways, effectively convinced the entire industry that specific aerodynamic body shapes were now a competitive necessity, not just a styling preference. Every manufacturer that followed with dedicated aero-focused racing bodies, right up through the winged Dodge Daytonas and Plymouth Superbirds 5 years later, was walking a path the Galaxie R-code had helped carve. This was a car that fans could genuinely relate to in a way few racing programs allow. NASCAR's rules at the time required a meaningful connection between the cars racing on Sunday and the cars sitting on dealership lots. A customer really could walk into a Ford dealership and spec out a car to nearly NASCAR-level performance specification. Ford did a lot of winning on Sunday in 1964. And Ford dealers did a lot of selling on Monday because of it. The practical price of all that performance. For all its capability, the R-code Galaxie was never going to be a long-term production strategy, and understanding why explains its genuine rarity today. The R-code 427 was expensive. The single four-barrel Q-code version of the 427 alone added $461.60 to a car's price, a genuinely significant sum in 1964 dollars. Adding the dual carburetor R-code configuration piled on approximately another $109 on top of that. This was not an impulse purchase for the average Galaxie buyer. It was a deliberate, expensive decision made by someone who specifically wanted uncompromised performance and understood exactly what they were signing up for. And what they were signing up for included genuine daily driving compromises. Fuel economy on the R-Code Galaxie sat around 8 miles per gallon, a number that, even in an era of famously cheap gasoline, made the car a genuinely impractical daily driver for anyone watching their household budget. Combine that with the high production costs of building an essentially race-spec engine on a mainstream assembly line, and Ford's own internal math on the R-Code option was never going to support long-term, high-volume production. The R-Code was fundamentally a low-volume specialty product from the very beginning. Ford built 3,857 R-Code units in 1963, the engine's first full year of availability. That number dropped to 3,260 combined Q-Code and R-Code units across 1964, with the true dual-carburetor R-Code representing a meaningfully smaller slice of that already small total. Some sources place the specific 1964 R-Code Galaxie production at 3,140 units. Compare that to the 593,533 total full-size Fords built that same model year, and the R-Code represents less than 1% of total Galaxie production. This was always going to be a car built for a narrow niche of committed racers and serious performance enthusiasts, never a mainstream option that the broader Galaxie buying public was meaningfully considering. By the time 1964 ended, the R-Code's brief moment in the spotlight was effectively over. The second-generation Galaxie itself was reaching the end of its production cycle. Ford's racing focus was shifting toward other platforms, and the R-Code option quietly disappeared from the order sheet. Why history forgot it? Standing in the shadow of 1964. So if the Galaxie R-Code was this capable, genuinely dominant on the NASCAR ovals, genuinely quick on the street, genuinely rare, why doesn't it get talked about alongside the GTO, the Hemi, or even its own Fairlane Thunderbolt sibling? The honest answer is timing, and it's almost unfair timing at that. 1964 gave the world an extraordinary concentration of automotive legends, all arriving within months of each other. The Pontiac GTO essentially invented the muscle car concept as a marketable category. The Ford Mustang created the pony car segment and became one of the best-selling new nameplates in automotive history. The Chrysler 426 Race Hemi instantly rewrote what a competitive NASCAR engine looked like. The Oldsmobile 442 and the Plymouth Barracuda both launched into that same crowded conversation. Each of those stories had a clean, marketable narrative that magazine writers and car buyers could easily grab onto. The GTO was the affordable performance car for the masses. The Mustang was youthful and stylish and represented a genuinely new kind of automobile. The Hemi was pure, uncompromising racing power. The Galaxie R-Code story was more complicated, and complicated stories don't sell magazine covers as easily. It wasn't a dedicated performance model with its own distinct name and identity. It was an expensive option buried within Ford's mainstream full-size lineup, wearing the same body as the family sedan parked next to it in the dealership lot. Its most extreme competition variant already had a more famous, more focused sibling, the Fairlane Thunderbolt, which had a purpose-built identity, a smaller and more dramatic production run, and a name that sounded like something out of a comic book. Even within Ford's own 1964 story, the Galaxie R-Code was competing for attention against the brand-new Mustang, which was about to become one of the most culturally significant automobiles ever built. Nobody at Ford's marketing department in 1964 was prioritizing publicity for an expensive, low-volume engine option buried in the full-size lineup, when they had an entirely new pony car about to reshape the American automotive landscape. The R-Code Galaxie did its talking on the NASCAR ovals, where serious enthusiasts were paying close attention. It just never built the kind of mainstream cultural footprint that would have carried its name forward the way the GTO, the Mustang, and the Hemi carried theirs. The collector market, hunting for one of 76. And this is where the Galaxie R code story becomes genuinely compelling for anyone paying attention to the current classic car market. Of the roughly 3,140 R code Galaxies built for 1964, only 76 are known to exist today in the official registry maintained by dedicated Ford enthusiasts and researchers. That's a survival rate under 2.5%, a genuinely severe attrition rate, even accounting for the fact that these were high-performance cars driven hard by owners who bought them specifically to use their performance, not preserve it for posterity. The collector market has taken real notice of what remains. Hagerty's historical valuation data traces a clear appreciation curve. A documented sale from October 1988 priced an R code Galaxie at $14,850, approximately $29,500 when adjusted for inflation, roughly the cost of a new Ford Taurus at the time of that adjustment calculation. Today, that same class of car carries a valuation range of $29,700 to $86,800, depending on condition, representing a genuinely meaningful annual rate of return over that multi-decade period. More recent auction and private sale data supports continued strength in this market. Well-documented, correctly restored examples, cars with matching numbers, verified door tags, and legitimate R code provenance, have commanded prices well into six figures at major specialty auctions. One meticulously restored 1964 Galaxie 500 XL R code, finished in its correct factory raven black over red interior, and driven fewer than 150 miles since a complete restoration, achieved AACA Grand National recognition with a perfect 100 out of 100 judged score. The kind of documentation and condition that serious collectors specifically seek out and are willing to pay a premium for. The rarity math here is genuinely stark when you compare it to more famous 1964 muscle car siblings. The Fairlane Thunderbolt, built in a run of just 100 units, is rightfully celebrated as one of the rarest and most valuable Fords of the era, regularly commanding prices well over $150,000 at major auctions. The Galaxie R code, despite a larger original production run, has a documented surviving population that is proportionally just as scarce, and it remains, for now, a considerably more attainable entry point into genuine 1964 Ford 427 ownership. For a collector who wants the specific historical significance of Ford's R code 427, the engine that won 30 NASCAR races and helped define an entire era of full-size performance. Without competing for one of the extraordinarily scarce Fairlane Thunderbolts, the Galaxie R code represents one of the most historically important and still genuinely findable pieces of 1964's extraordinary automotive story. 425 horsepower, a 427 cubic inch V8, built less for civility than for domination. 30 NASCAR wins in a single season, and a survival rate so low that only 76 are confirmed to exist anywhere in the world today. The 1964 Ford Galaxie 500 R code did everything the Golden Age's most celebrated muscle cars did. It just did it wearing bucket seats and chrome trim instead of a name that sounded dangerous. It got lost in the shadow of a model year that gave America the GTO, the Mustang, and the Hemi almost simultaneously. But on the NASCAR ovals in 1964, where the results actually mattered, this quiet luxury car with a racing engine under its hood was the one doing most of the winning. Now I want to hear from you. Did you know about the Galaxie R code before today? And which other forgotten 1964 performance car do you think deserves its own deep dive on this channel? Drop it in the comments. We read every single one. If this story surprised you, hit the like button and subscribe for American automotive history that most channels never bother to tell. See you next time.